This is the new Prs Guitar Stand. If you're into heavy metal, it's metal and it's heavy. And if you notice, it has a trochoidal bass. That's right, all you Wankel fans will know what that is. It's a great way to display your guitar, and of course your PRS guitar. We have.
So if you're thinking about starting a podcast and you need something that's going to solve a lot of problems for you, no matter which way you want to do it, you're not sure if you want to do streaming, you want to have guests over Skype or Zoom, you want to have guests that don't know how to Skype or Zoom and you want to use your phone to call them up, you have a solution for all those different things and a way to record them super easily at a really high level. That's it. Doesn't get much better than that. The Zoom PodTrack P4 is available at chucklevins.com. Check it out, $199. Get podcasting.
So the Toka Kit Box Suitcase Drum Kit with the bass drum, snare, and the tom-tom. The snare may also be disengaged. Fun little kit. Check it out at chucklevins.com.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Cause baby, I feel real good and I wish I would. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Everybody watch out. Watch out now. I'm ready for a good time, and I came to groove. The whole band's here, and we came to move. Got a fresh haircut and 2 new shoes. We're here all night like we got nothing to lose. I'm coming out the jacket, cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get up out your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot, and I can't be beat. Watch out now.
Hello, world. Welcome back to another episode of Chuck Levin's Live. I'm Adam Levin, and as usual, we have another super cool episode for you today. We've got the guys from Vox here today, and we are going to talk about the newly released, literally showed up yesterday, VALVENERGY pedals. They are super cool. We got the R&D guy. We got the product specialist. We're going to introduce them in a little bit. It's going to be wild. We're going to dive deep into these things. They just came out. We just plugged them in yesterday, and they are ridiculous. And these giveaways just keep getting crazier. We're giving away all 4 on a pedal board, fully loaded Vox VALVENERGY pedal board for free. You just got to enter. There it is. T-minus 35 minutes. Don't miss out. It's too easy. Tell your friends. Tell some people. Maybe they'll give you one. I don't know. Just try. Just enter to win because it's wild. This is like, I don't know, $700 some odd worth of stuff, and it's free. So there's lots of ways to enter. Check out the link in the comments. The dudes behind the scenes will put it there so they make it easy for you. You can also check it out on chucklevins.com. It's right there. But yeah, this is going to be a wild ride. I think before we get too deep into it, we need a moment of silence. Yesterday, we lost one of the greats, Eddie Van Halen, 65 years young, to an all too common disease. So I know that's been hurting a lot of people. And amidst all the things that have been hurting this year, this one does hurt as well. So, Eddie, we miss you. You're the man. You changed rock forever. And music stores in general, I mean, owe a lot to, I mean, he really cared about the industry, the musicianship, the craftsmanship of the people behind the gear. So it stings deep, but and he'll be sorely missed, I know, throughout the industry. So yeah. But with that, let's talk about some amps. Let's talk about some amp modeling. Talk about some cool pedals. Before we bring the guys in, Don't be shy. We got some really cool guys that can answer some great questions about these pedals. They are brand new. So any questions you have, drop them in the comments. We will get to them. Anything you want, you have direct access to the guys behind the scenes, behind the pedals that make these things from the ground up at the team at Vox. So don't be shy. And let's throw in a demo video of the pedals, and then we'll bring the guys on. There it is. And guys, welcome to the stream. We have Kenny and Dave from the Vox team. We got Kenny all the way in California, and we got Dave all the way in the United Kingdom. Guys, welcome to the stream.
Here we are.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
So these were announced at NAMM earlier this year in January, and at long last, they're here. The real deal. I think we'll start with Dave and talk about, Dave, why don't you explain a little bit about your role in the company and your role in designing these pedals?
Sure. So my name is Dave Clarke. I've been with Vox 16 years this year. I am R&D manager in the UK, managing the R&D of all sorts of projects from amps to pedals and so on. The products were designed by our team in the UK, predominantly by the lead engineer, Phil Scarf. And they started off as an idea of how can we take these iconic amp sounds and actually not just shrink them down, but actually make them amazing, but also small. And thankfully, we are sort of tied in with Korg, who have so much new technology, and we were able to collaborate heavily with them and introduce the new tube into these pedals and actually bring real tube tone into a product that you can't believe that it actually sounds the way it does. They're pretty special.
That's awesome. The new tube is something that you guys have been putting in a lot more products, and I think that technology by itself is cool enough to just spend a moment talking about. So I think we've talked about it with some of the other streams that we've done with the Korg family of brands, but let's talk about new tube for a second. So could you dive a little bit deeper into new tube and just kind of what that brings to these pedals?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just to kind of give it a little bit of background on new tube. So new tube was an idea that Mieda-san of Korg, and Mieda-san is biggest brain in the world, and he designed the Univibe that was used by Jimi Hendrix all those years ago, and he's designed countless cool products. And he had an idea. He was like, vacuum fluorescent displays have so many of the same components as a vacuum tube. I wonder if it would actually be possible to repurpose a vacuum fluorescent display as an audio tube device. So he approached the Noritake company and said to them, listen, I've got this idea of turning one of your VFDs into an audio tube. Would you be interested in collaborating with us? And I think he was expecting them to say no, because the volume that they do of VFDs versus YouTube was going to be like this big versus this big. But they were kind of like, that's fun. That's kind of interesting. You know, we do VFDs and spark plugs and China teacups, but we don't do cool stuff like, you know, music and audio. So fast forward many iterations, many. We're talking about 5 or 6 years of development, taking the concept design, proving it out, and then refining what it had become. Because in the beginning, it was like, it works, but yeah, it's really noisy. And then it's like, okay, we need to get rid of that. And then we just refined it until we've ended up with a really robust, repeatable component, real device. Now, it's not just some gimmick. It's not solid state. It's not got transistors. This is a vacuum tube. It happens to look very different to a traditional vacuum tube, but that's just because we're able to repurpose something to be way smaller. And these vacuum tubes they're not handmade. These are made by like a complex machine where they chuck raw materials in one end, out the other side comes new tube. So it means we end up with like really consistent supply, really, you know, high yield rates and things like that. And what we found is, you know, over time, the more we're using it, the more we're adding it into things, the more we're finding new applications for new tube. And I kind of look at new tube as a little bit like, you know, there hasn't been development in tube technology for 40, 50, 60 years because it got replaced. You know, the transistor came in. Why on earth do we need vacuum tubes? Vacuum tubes are defunct. You know, I remember hearing a fantastic quote, and it was, if they built a modern day cell phone, and I'm talking, when I say modern day cell phone, I mean kind of like 2000, so not that modern, but still, Nokia 3310 or something like that, it would be the size of the Washington Monument if they made it for vacuum tubes. So why the hell would you need them? But then, of course, musicians, guitarists, audiophiles would just hang on, these things sound amazing. But because, you know, the wider, you know, industry wasn't using them, the development stopped, the miniaturization stopped, and the cost kind of plateaued. So nothing ever got cheaper. It was what it was. And but we continue to use them, you know, and they're still just an amazing sound that you get from a vacuum tube. It's so much harder to get that from a solely solid state product. So the way I look at new tube is it's like we're saving tube tone for the future generations, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. But we secured our own tube supply, so we can add in tube tone wherever we like, you know. So it's actually quite nice to have that that security blanket. So in case there are any supply issues with other tube manufacturers, naming no names, that, you know, we actually are able to add tube tone to product, and you know, it's quite an exciting thing. So
I love it. I think it's one of the coolest things, and I'll let Kenny speak more to it, but it feels like a tube. I mean, that's the whole point, is that you could get close with the sound, and it has that sound, but it feels like it is a real tube. It feels that way too when you play it. It's reactive, it's responsive. You get that vibe, that response when you're playing back from it.
Yeah, no, and that's something that's kind of like the inspiration behind why is it? Because it was like digging into it. Why do we like tubes? What is it about tubes that we like? And it's exactly that. It's your brain hears the tube, and you hear the even order harmonic sequence, and your brain just goes, "Ooh, I like that." You don't know why, but it's there, you know. And then you also add in, you know, the compression and all the other things that happen with the tube, and it makes for a very special product, that's for sure.
That's awesome. So, you know, Vox's history is tube written and full of history. Can you give us a little bit of a taste for those that might not know the storied history? Just Vox, you know, where have we been, where are we going, where have we come from, and kind of how we landed here?
Well, let's start at the beginning. 1957, Vox was founded. Tom Jennings and Dick Denny, and they were making a few amps. I mean, that was the thing. They made a few amps. They had a few sort of successful products, and they started making a couple of little amps. It was like, it was a 10 watt and 15 watt AC15s, and they were kind of at the forefront of, like, the British invasion, if you like. So it was, people's taste in music was changing, and Vox evolved along with that change in music. And one of the things that came out of it was like, hey, 15 watts is not loud enough. We need more power. And that's where the AC30 came from. And of course, I'm just going to, pick up AC30.
There it is.
The only Vox t-shirt I own. So then the AC30 came along because it was loud enough, and suddenly it was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what we need. So then more and more of these British bands started using Vox. So to name but a few, as you know, it was like, Hank Marvin never really made it stateside, but in the UK was like very big, but he was one of the kind of ones right at the beginning. But then you fast forward to like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, the Kinks, some huge names. But of course, really, would Vox be the same if it hadn't been for the link with the Beatles? Now, who knows? But the deal that was done to get Vox, Beatles basically said, hey, we're a cool new band, give us some free stuff. And Vox initially were kind of like, oh, we don't think so. But the store owner, he was just like, okay, we'll give you a go. He put his neck out of the line, but you have to exclusively use Vox for, I can't remember the exact time period. It was like 5 or 10 years or something. It was like a long period of time. And suddenly they went off and became the biggest band the world has ever known, and Vox came along with that, and that was it. So Vox really kind of just really started to like skyrocket. We don't like to talk about 70s and the 80s, but from the 90s things went well. And then in 1992, Korg acquired Vox as part of a buyout of the UK distributor that used to distribute Vox. And from there, we've kind of gone from what was a dormant brand, which pains me to think about, to where we are now, to being, one of the leading amp companies in the world again, and it's an exciting time. I mean, I joined the company, like I said, 16 years ago. I joined before the AC30 Custom Classic was released, so I joined right at the beginning when Vox was just kind of like this big. And now we've grown to a much bigger company. We've got much more products, and we're back out there again. Before there was the AC30s, you couldn't buy them because no one was making them. We took the bold decision to manufacture in China, which was heavily frowned upon at the time. But then we were like, but look how much you can buy an AC30 for now, and just look at the quality and look how good it is. Oh yeah, okay. So I think it was forgiven in the end.
So what products have you been involved in the development of in your tenure there so far?
Crikey, okay. So the first product I ever worked on when I joined Vox was the AC30 BM, which was a limited edition Brian May AC30. It's kind of obscure. You might need to Google it. We only made 500, but it had one knob, and it was gain. That was it. Everything else was hardwired inside. It was exactly how Brian has his amps, which he basically, all of the top boost, everything, he rips all of that out. It's a normal channel phase inverter and a 30-watt power stage, Alnico Blues, and a treble booster in the front. So that was my first project to work on, which was kind of cool because, I mean, I came in from I used to design computers for a living, so it was kind of a bit cooler than designing boring computers. But from there, I mean, the products I've been involved with, AC15 Custom Classic. I designed the Night Train series, the current hand-wired series, the AC30 C2. Was involved with the AC15 C1. But out of the UK office, like I say, Phil Scarth, who's the other engineer, so with me in the UK, we've developed AC10, AC30 S1, the 60th anniversary hand-wired UK-made products that we did again as a super duper limited edition. That was designed meticulously. Yeah, sorry, that was a bad memory design. I think by me. So you know, I can't really remember how many products I've done, but I've been involved with like a lot. And then as a resource, our office also is heavily involved with the voicing of some of our other digital products that happen. So a lot of the Korg technologies, like DSP and amp modeling, things like that, we get called in to help with or to advise and consult with regards to voicing. But they're the ones with the ones and zeros. They go ahead and they're the wizards with the software. So we leave them to that because that's their domain. But yeah, and actually this, oh guys, the other side, I'm mirrored. Here we go. This thing here, this is the mini Super Beetle, and that was one of the last products I was involved with designing.
It's awesome. And these basically are kind of a culmination of all of those things. You know,
Yes.
it's amp sound, it's analog, it's tube, it's amp the whole way through.
Yeah.
So I think it's time we dive into these a little bit. This is the hottest thing on the planet right now. Kenny, why don't you, like, you know, play us some stuff, you know, give us a rundown of the pedals and what they do, how they do it, what's going on, and we can just, you know, bat some things around and see where this goes.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a total of 4 pedals. Right now it's called the Silk Drive and the Mystic Edge, as you can see right here. And there's 2 more, which we'll get into later. It's called the Copperhead and the Cutting Edge. So 4 distinct iconic amp sounds and models are in each of these pedals. So the Silk Drive is kind of based out of that boutique style, clean overdrive, that nice, distinct, creamy overdrive to this wide range of frequencies. So right now, this is the Silk Drive at like kind of in the breakup overdrive sound. I'm going to turn myself down. So on the controls, it's got volume, gain, and 3-band EQ with a bright switch. Depending on how dark or bright your guitar is, naturally, you could always voice that specifically to what you have. Right now, the bright switch is turned off on downside, and as you can see, the bass and middle's up into noon, and then trebles a little bit on the around like 1 o'clock ish. So, and cool thing about all of these pedals is that it really does have that amp quality to it. So if you turn down on the volume, it really does react like that. And also you don't have to turn down on your volume. You could really just play softly and still create that nice big dynamics without changing anything on the amps.
So Kenny, before you go too much further, real quick, I think it's a fair question. What is your signal chain right now so that everyone understands what we're really hearing with these things?
Right.
Thanks, Steven. Good question.
Thank
Fair
you,
question.
Steven. Yeah, very
keeping
fair.
us honest.
Yeah, so I have the guitar plugged into these 2 amps, and surprisingly enough, it goes right into my DAW. So there's no amp. Because
that's it.
That is it. Because, as you can see right here, the top part of each of these VALVENERGY pedals, they have this thing called mode. And by switching over to standard, pre, and cab, you could have 3 different ways to use the VALVENERGY. So right now I have the cab simulator switched over just like that. And that adds the cab simulator in the pedals itself, and then you could plug straight into your audio interface and into your digital audio workstation, which what I'm doing right now. Also, it has the standard mode, which is you could just use it as a standard pedal, and then the preamp section, or the preamp, you could use that as literally a preamp. So you run your guitar into the pedal, and then from the out of the pedal, you go into the return of the effects loop of the amp. So you're bypassing the preamp section of the amp. So if you're, let's say, for a touring musician, if touring ever comes back, hopefully soon, is that usually we all get a backline amp, whether, whatever the amp may be, but sometimes the preamps are a little bit, not as good sometimes, or really inconsistent if you're touring each venue to venue to venue or whatever. So
not every venue has a Vox.
Yeah, not every venue has a Vox, for sure. And then, so you want to have something more consistent on the preamp side of things. So you'd run these any of these pedals as your preamp, and then run into the power section to power up the speakers. So you could get a way more consistent sound out from just these pedals into it. And another cool feature of the VALVENERGY that I don't think none of the other companies do or pedals do, it's got a thing called the link right here. So all you need is a TRS 1/8" cable to plug in 2 of these, up to 2 pedals. And the cool thing is that, you know, sometimes when you want to switch overdrive pedals or anything, you have to step on the one that's already on, turn that off, and then step on the other one to turn it on, obviously, or like, you know, step on it sideways and do it. I've done that before, but when you're running around on stage, it's kind of hard to do that, or else you'll just trip and fall, and you don't want that to happen. So cool thing about the link feature is that right now the silk drive is on. And if I want to switch over the Mystic Edge, I don't need to turn this off. I just step on this, and it just switches over. Back again.
Channel switching built in.
Exactly.
To the pedals.
So essentially, basically, you could have, right now they're next to each other, but let's say you want, for real estate purposes, for the pedal board, you could have this right in the corner of the, you know, bottom, the left-hand corner, and you could have the other pedal on the top right-hand corner, and you don't have to worry about switching back and forth, like 2 different locations of the pedal board, which is, it's very, very unique and useful, stage friendly, I gotta say. And you know, it's a channel switch. So you could run these 2 as a preamp and run that into the power section of the amp. Then you have 2 channels, 2-channel amp on the floor, which is, come on, like you gotta have that. You know,
it's awesome.
It's like a back. It's like you could use it as a backup. You could do it as your main amp sound if you want to. Just leave it in your back, and it's small as any size pedal, so you could just have that in your case anywhere, and it could be your, yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't just work with 2. It will work if you buy a splitter. You can link up as many of them as you like.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah. No. So actually, it will. You could actually get all 4 of them line and have a 4-channel switcher, and it would work exactly the same. So basically, you stamp on that one, everything else turns off. You stamp on the other one, everything turns off.
Oh, so it would bypass all of them. So you
everything. So you don't
it's
have
all
to do
it's like
kind of
A, and then everything else is B.
Exactly.
I was wondering that because I thought I saw that in the video, and I looked. It's like you can't link them, but you can. You heard it here first, world. Boom, 4 channels.
Just get.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
As many as you like. Link them up, and whatever is on, and whatever you don't want is off.
And that leads me to say we're giving away all 4. We're giving them away. You can win this 4-channel amp switch.
Do it
right now. Do it.
I know.
Just do it
right here.
Don't wait. Do it now. There's 10 minutes left. You crazy? Just sign up. All right.
Thank you
now,
David. Thank you.
Now you can play the pedals.
Yes.
Now you can just rip it and let us hear these things.
So the silk drive. Whoop, I dropped my tape. It's been a while.
I think you're on the.
What's that?
You're on the Mystic drive right now, I think.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Right now, the bright switch is off, and pretty much the tone cut is right in the middle, and then bass treble is pretty much, you know, where it's at.
And the Mystic drive is the AC30.
Correct.
That's the classic Vox.
That's the
AC30
Vox
sound.
Yeah. So just yeah. Sorry, you can really hear the distinct mid range. could turn this into more of a clean amp. Like that, kind of scoopy, kind of make it more like an American blackface sort of sound. It's a nice clean tone. And then get into the crunchy side for a good rhythm sound. It's pretty killing. It sounds
That's awesome.
So good. And I've recorded, I've done a demo, which you could probably see it on Vox's YouTube channel. I did a demo with this, and I'm splitting between recording DAW and also using this as a standard pedal plugged into an AC-15. And I'm alternating between the cab sim and the standard mode. And honestly, I mean, you'll hear the difference, but they both sound great. So, you know,
let's talk about the cab sim for a second, because you guys were talking about this before we came live, and maybe while we're talking about it, you can switch out those pedals to play the other ones. Mm-hmm. So Dave, you were telling me that each pedal, its cab sim is kind of tailored to the amp that it's modeling. Can you tell us a little bit more about, like, kind of how you designed that, what went behind it, and what cabs you paired with each pedal?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it was a real labor of love, making sure that, you know, each amp sound matched the cabinet that it should be with. For example, AC30 is a 212 combo, you know, so it made no sense for us to just have a blanket cabinet simulation where it was just like, you know, a 412 for all models, because it wouldn't suit it. You know, the Copperhead is a 412. The cutting edge is a 412, but they're different types of 412 with different types of characteristics, different resonances. And that was meticulously recreated using analog filtering. And as much as it would have been easier for us to just say, yeah, do the same thing because it makes it easier to manufacture them, it didn't suit the product. And we basically, everything in here has been meticulously designed. Phil has lost many nights of sleep working on this project, and it was an absolute passion of his, and he's done an amazing job when it comes to how each amp reacts and sounds with the appropriate cabinet simulator. So yeah, it's been a real labor of love and hate, maybe a little bit too, but you know, we got there with it.
So let's go through them real quick, and can you tell us what cab goes with each pedal? So with the Silk Drive, what sort of cab are we getting when we hit the simulator? That's
a 212 cab that you're listening to there.
And then the other one, we already listened to the Mystic Drive, which is that AC30.
That'll be your classic. That's based heavily on the Alnico Blue AC30.
And then we have Cutting Edge.
Cutting Edge again, that's a 412, thinking of our late great Eddie on that one. And then and the Copperhead as well, another 412 for that one.
Cool. Well, it sounds like Kenny is ready to rock on the other two, so let's go through them.
Yeah, the Copperhead, obviously, as you can imagine, it's that other British overdrive sound, or the amp sound. So I have it voiced so where the mid-range is bumped a little bit to get that spongy mid-range tone. That's also unique for that style of amps. I mean, that's the sound, right?
That's
just
it.
Ripping sound. And you can really get into really more of that older style territory by just taming down the gain. So it's a great rhythm tone too, and it's a lot of gain on tap. You can really almost play metal, like old school thrash metal if you want to. And then moving into the cutting edge, which, as you can see on the EQ, it's scooped a little bit. I'm turning down the mid range and bumping the bass and treble. And also, is right here, it said there's a tight knob where you could literally tighten the bottom low end. So if you're getting into that old drop tuning sound, you could turn that tight knob all the way up and get this more of a tighter tone. So if I'm turning down the tight knob, you get more of that flubby low end, not flubby, but flubbier low end. I have to, you have to, right? But you get that. It's, as you can hear, it's very versatile. And also it's a very gainy amp, or I keep saying amp because it really does sound like an amp, a pedal, but you can get into a nice rhythm, crunchy tone, even at this gain setup. Sorry, I was in the Copperhead for the whole time, wasn't I? Sorry about that. This is the cutting edge. Sorry, folks. So I'm just turning down the tightness, so you can really get that nice dynamic. Sorry, Eddie. Completely different sound. So just get that punchy, in-your-face mid-range into more of a scooped sound. So even when you're recording from home, knocking down demos or just ideas, these are great sources to record great amp tones on a pedal format. So when you're, let's say if you're want to record a bunch of heavier type of sounds, you could have a Copperhead pedal voiced like this, where you have more of that punching mid-range, and you want to layer some guitar tones on top of that, and you don't want to have anything that's similar to that sound, because it's just, there's no point to it. So having the cutting edge being that scoop frequency that has more of the highs and lows, and you're letting the Copperhead take care of that mid-range, you get to really record some really massive sound out of just these two pedals. So it's just a must-have, and y'all could have it too, all four of them.
That's it. You could, and I think we might have picked the winner, but you got to wait a little bit longer till we announce this winner. So Dave, if you could talk to us a little bit, like what went into, like, these are dead-on replicas of some of the most iconic amps ever. What goes into getting those sounds, and how do you nail it I mean, it responds the right way. The dials are the right way. You can work them like you would the real thing. So what goes into developing these pedals?
Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears mainly. Bleeding is another thing. Yeah, I mean, it really was a question of, we had the amps they were based on, and we had so many guitars, so many amps, and it was a question of kind of go, let's see what we can do. The starter for 10 is to kind of capture the essence of the amplifier. Looking at the amp, we obviously start with the AC30. It's our amp. We know exactly what goes into that. We know what its characteristics should be. So using our ears, using specialist software, using we can capture the tone, and actually then reference that and use specialist simulation software to develop a lot of the circuitry kind of in the virtual space first, before we even think about putting anything together. Okay, we need to get it in the ballpark, we need to get close. And even when we like, oh, it's exactly the same as what we captured there, then you hear it and you're like, oh, hang on, but it's not exactly the same, because simulations are perfect and the world is not. So you have to work your imperfections into your simulation to make it actually sound as it should in the real world. So it was meticulous checking, A-Bing, over and over and over, becoming so familiar with the amps that, when it came to playing the amps in the end, Phil didn't even need to A-B it. He could play and go, something's not right here, we need to change something. And then we'd go and check it, and he's absolutely right. So it was, like I say, it was blood, sweat, tears, and meticulous research, meticulous listening, and just never giving up on getting that tone exactly right. And that's exactly what we did.
I'm imagining like the craziest room full of amps and you guys just like blowing your ears off. Like what's it really like? Like how many players do you bring in, and like, what kind of data do you get from players as you're kind of building these things out, and like how does that go?
Yeah, so to begin with, we keep it as a small group to begin with, because we need to kind of get the tone where it needs to be first. Sometimes too many voices can, keep the development slow. So we get where we think we've got to be. And then, yes, exactly that. We have a room full of amps. We have a soundproof room. We can play as loud as we like. And we have an international voicing team, which we have guys from the US, UK, we've got guys from Germany, we've got, guys from Japan. And we all come together and we all listen. And everyone, there's no anger, if there's a bit of critique, or this is too bright, this is too spongy, this is too, the mid-range center point needs to shift. Okay, that's fine. And then with all of that feedback from all the different ears from all over the world, because everyone hears things differently. Tone is so subjective as it can be, but also we needed to kind of like remove the subjectivity, and that's why we introduced, using specialist softwares and lots of audio measurement and things like that to make sure that what we were hearing was correct and what Phil was hearing was correct, and it generally was, so it really is, imagine a room, we've got 4 of these iconic amps lined up. Some of them are 100-watt amps in a very small room, fully cranked, because we need to make sure it's all sounding the same. And yeah, it really is as mad as it sounds, but it's a lot of fun.
It's a delicate game amp modeling, and sometimes gets the, it gets frowned upon a little bit when you say, oh, amp modeling, but no one else would you trust with this sort of process other than Vox to really like get this done right. And it can't be, it is a subjective thing. Tone, it's the everlasting hunt for what it's supposed to sound like. So I think you guys have really nailed it and done a phenomenal job. Hearing Kenny play and go through the different ways that you can work these things to get all those different rich, just the styles out of it and the way it responds to the playing. It's it's a really cool process. Now we had a question. Is it possible to get updates on these things? Like, will they ever be updated, or so what's the deal?
Okay, so what we need to remember about these I keep calling them amps as well. What we need to remember about these pedals is they are analog pedals. Okay, OLED aside, everything inside, if you need to change something, you need to physically open it up and change components. There is no digital interference in the signal path whatsoever. So any sound that you hear is created completely discreetly. There is no ability to do any software updates on these at all because there is nothing to update. The OLED oscilloscope is doing its job and doesn't need to do anything else. Everything else is analog. If there's ever going to be rolling changes, they will have to be done at the factory. So this is, even though it looks extremely modern and cutting edge technology, underneath the hood it is still a traditional analog pedal.
Really is a fully analog amp signal,
Yes.
just without the power amp. It's the real deal.
With the new tube technology.
With real tubes. With
Yeah.
real tubes.
Yeah.
New tubes are real tubes, everybody.
It really
Not
does.
faking it.
I got to add, just as a player standpoint, when I was going through these for the first time and listening to it through monitors, it really did sound like they were mic'd up amps, and I was just blown away. Even before I was starting, like as like a Vox product specialist, I was hearing these. I'm just like, oh my god, they sound fantastic, and all these ideas came up. I was like, I could use this as a recording. I could use it as a backup amp sort of thing. You could just send it right into the front of house and just run it through the, in your mix or the monitors. And you could pretty much, get away with just one pedal and survive through the whole gig if your amp goes down or something like that. And this really does have that analog amp, real amp feel. A lot of the digital amp simulator, which I do own many of these of other brands, they all have that digital high-end thing that only digital modeling have, and which these Valve Energy, it has that analog top-end roll-off in a way where it really does react and feel like a tube amp, and just it's mind-blowing just playing these always. And there's always like new discoveries I get. Even this, never thought about having 4 channel splitting cable. I'm like, okay, well, then there you go. It's just unstoppable. Just have 4 of these pedals and 4 cables, and you're pretty much set, ready to go.
On the channel switching, we had a question earlier. So is it possible to use the switching with any other brand of pedals? Would it work with anything else, or is it strictly with the Valve Energy pedals?
No, it's proprietary.
Strictly with these guys.
So get all 4.
And do you think there might be other Valve Energy pedals down the road? Never say never.
I would never say never. Let's get these ones going first.
Yeah.
Nice.
Super cool. So, and what's really cool about them again is the mode thing means that you can use them in all these settings. Like you were saying, like you could be in your bedroom and put it on cab sim and plug it into your interface and just rip like full high gain tone without bothering your entire building. You don't need a soundproof room like they have at Vox.
Right. Or other ways
cool.
you could use it is that you could use, let's say, the Silk drive or the Copperhead drive at low gain, where it's like on the verge of clipping or overdrive, and use that as a cab sim and just leave that on at all times, and using the Mystic Edge or the Cutting Edge as a standard pedal. So there's always all these different ways and combinations you could use. So you could literally use one of these pedals as an amp, and then use the pedal as a standard pedal. You know what I mean? So like there's so many different ways, and they all do react differently, because if you turn off the cab sim, you're really hearing the preamp section of the pedal. So that has that distinct voice. And also if you have your own IRs in your DAW, impulse response, like a speaker cab simulation and all that stuff in your recording software, you could run it on the preamp section on these pedals, and then just switch different cab sims and get a different type of sound. Because if you have your favorite cab sim, just why not just use that? And there's always all these different possibilities that I'm still discovering myself, and anybody could. There's like just a great whiteboard of ideas and possibilities you could get from this. So I'm excited.
We
to
got
just
we
even
got two
discover
good
more.
questions
Yeah.
that just rolled in. So from our man Bojan, are these all 9-volt supplies?
Yes.
Yes, they're 9 volts on the outside.
Easy.
9 volts on the outside, but what we do inside is we boost the volts up to 15 volts to give it more headroom.
That's the R&D in there. That's the real. That's where I nerd out. That's the nerdy stuff. That's where stuff gets really good. That's cool. That and the oscilloscope are where that's where my mind goes. So Stevens asked, so these are real tubes. Do they get hot? Do they wear out? Do you need to be concerned with some of the other situations you would normally be worried about with more traditional tubes? I'm not going to say other real tubes. These are real tubes.
Dark real tubes, yes. Do they get hot? Not especially. They get warm because they're a tube and they're heating, but they don't get dangerously hot. They're not going to be. They don't need any cooling. As far as wear out, I think we have an estimated mean time between failure of about 20,000 hours, which basically makes them effectively infinite. Just by looking at playing and things like that. So you get about 20,000 hours worth of play out of those, which I don't know how many years that is, but it's a lot. And
that's plenty.
And as far as the biasing is concerned, it's all taken care of inside the product. So there's no need to ever worry about tweaking any bias or anything like that. It's all taken care of inside.
You heard it here. That's it. Kenny, I think you should play us out a little bit more with whatever your favorite pedal is. Let's rip it a little longer. And we're going to announce who gets to win all 4 of the brandly new released Valve Energy pedals. Just hit the floor yesterday, and here we are. We got them.
Yeah.
Giving them away. Kenny, let's rip it.
Yeah. So this is just to simulate the capstan. This is exactly what without the pedal. Just a DAW. Doesn't get flubby anywhere. Pretty ripping.
You can tell they feel like you can tell they respond the right way, like the way you're playing it, like I can feel it, like it has that analog, that true tube, like it rips that way, like you don't just get that just running through distortion pedal, like it's a totally different thing.
It's got this really unforgiving feel too. There's a lot of these amp models, like digital amp modelers. They're nice to you, if you know what I mean. They're like, it's okay, I know what you're trying to say, and they kind of like cover. It feels like they're covering your little flubs or whatnot. You know, it helps me out a lot too. But things about the Valve Energy is that it really is like a unforgiving tube amp, just like any of these, you know, the ones that are based out of, and really does have that amp-like feel to it. So it really puts me on my toes at all times. It really feels like I'm going through nice studio monitors or through my in-ears that are mic'd up. So it's fantastic.
It's awesome.
Can't say anything better about it. It's awesome.
It's awesome stuff. Well, it's been a long time coming. It's been since, you know, first seen at NAMM, and now literally we got them. You can come play them if you're in the local area. Come in. We'll plug them up. We'll let you rip on them for as long as you want. You can come into the store. Just gotta wear one of these, you know. Let's have some fun. Just come on out. We're here. Valve Energy. Just ask the guys at the front counter. We got you covered. But I think without further ado, let's give away the full deal. Let's give away the whole Valve Energy pedal, the 4-amp channel switching pedal board of madness. Guys behind the scenes, who's the winner? Who we got? Ryan W. from Linwood, Washington. Congratulations. You did it. You did the hard part. You won. Congratulations. We'll hit you up tomorrow. We'll get your information. We'll get this thing coming your way. Guys from literally across the globe, from as far away from here as you possibly can get, California and London.
Yeah.
We appreciate you both being here. Guys, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for diving deep into Vox and just the R&D and the insane development behind these awesome pedals. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. Chuck Levins, we really appreciate the history and the relationship. So it means a lot, you guys being here and having some fun with us.
Thank you.
Thanks
guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
We'll be back next week with